So in today's video, we're going to be learning about one of the teachings of corporate guru Peter Drucker. And that's how we can make the staff of an organization perform better. Because obviously what happens in most organizations is that staff work from their contracted hours, maybe from 9 to 5. And at 5 o'clock, they just say, right, that's it, I'm going home. And this may be regardless of how much work has been done, or whether their job has been good or not, or whether or not their work has in fact been focused on what the organization is hoping to achieve. So what we're looking at in this section is in Drucker's Management by Objectives, is managing their staff's performance by objectives. So in fact, staff aren't measured by the time so much, but in fact are when the objectives are complete. And in this way, the staff know what's expected of them, and so they know what to work towards. And part of this process is to make sure that an organization's objectives are aligned with the targets set for staff. And so to do that, Drucker, who came up with this philosophy, believes that objectives should be set at the top of the organization, then passed down to the business units, and then down onto the staff. So by doing this, it's going back up, isn't it? So once the staff have completed their objectives, then the business units have completed their objectives, and then the organization have completed their objectives. So do you see it's passed down, the targets, and so the work goes back up, and that means the objectives have been complete and the objectives are aligned. And this is called management by objectives. And one really important thing to note before we move on and look at the 5 steps is that in management by objectives, staff should be involved in the target setting process. So both for themselves, their personal objectives, as well as their divisional objectives. Because of course, this then helps them buy into their targets and make sure the targets are realistic. Because if they're realistic, the staff will be more motivated because they feel they can achieve them. If they're unrealistic, the staff might just be like, well, there's no way I'm going to do this. So what's the point in even trying? So it's all about motivation by making sure staff buy into it. So let's have a look at the 5 steps that Drucker said lead to effective management by objectives. So the first one is set. Then we move on to align, monitor, evaluate, and review. So now let's look at one individually. So step number 1 is setting the organizational objectives. So remember what we've just said. The objectives flow down, so they're set at the very top. So of course, for everything to be aligned, the organization needs to know what they want to achieve. Otherwise, how are the business units' objectives and the staff units going to ever be able to align? They're not, are they? So set organizational objectives. And for this process, we'll say that the organizational objectives, for an example, is to have the best customer service in the industry. So that's the organizational objective. So then we're moving down to step 2, and then we're going to align the employee objectives. So now we know what our organizational objectives are, we can align our employee targets to make sure the work they're doing is focused on the organization achieving those goals, which of course in our example is to have the best customer service in the industry. So perhaps an employee objective could be to make sure that all staff answer any customer queries within 1 day. And can you see there's an alignment there? By doing that, by making sure the staff have a target, it's aligned to the organizational objectives and it's going to help them achieve that. And then we move on to monitor performance, because of course there's no point in setting these objectives if they're not being monitored, because how are we going to know whether they're being done or not? So for example, for our example, we could maybe have a manager or a senior member of staff making sure, reviewing all the customer queries at the end of the day, just flagging up any that haven't been able to be met within that 1 day. And again, we can see that alignment happening, can't we? Because if that person's doing their job, then we know that the objectives for the whole organization are on target. So once the work has been monitored, we then move on to evaluate the performance. And of course, evaluating performance is basically finding out who's hitting their targets, who isn't, who's following their objectives, who isn't. And then, of course, we need a way to how we're going to find this out. So perhaps we could have online project checklists for every employee. So, yep, at the end of the day, when that senior member of staff's checking whose customer queries have been responded to, there could be a tick next to a member of staff if they have, or a cross if they haven't, for example. Just keeping track of who's performing well and who isn't. And then in the final step, of course, is review and feedback. So, let's say 10 members of staff are meeting their objectives, and let's say 10 aren't. So, of course, positive feedback needs to be given to those that have met their objectives, and then suggestions to those 10 that didn't, so that they can improve and start meeting their objectives. Because, of course, if they can improve, then the organization has more chances of meeting their objectives. And it's not just reviewing on the employee level. We're going to review at higher levels too. So departmental and business unit targets are constantly reviewed, and lessons are constantly learned from them. So there we go, that's today's short video on Drucker's management by objectives. Perfect for those of you studying for your E2 and your E3 exams. Now, if you want to get any more short videos on E2 and E3 specifically, then make sure you subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for listening, and good luck with your revision.